Billy Lee Oatney spent 17 years in prison appealing his murder conviction and death row sentence. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but in 2015, the Court of Appeals agreed with him. His lawyer did not do a good enough job on his behalf, and he deserved a new trial. The wheels continued to turn slowly, but in January of 2023, the trial was underway. Mindy Bush, Susi Larsen's sister, is astonished to find herself back in Hillsborough for the retrial of the man convicted of raping and killing her sister back in 1996.
I thought it was a joke. I couldn't believe it. It was... we were in shock.
Now the family relives the horror of that crime all over again.
It's hard to put into words, but it's devastating. It's really hard. We thought this was in bed, gone. We were just starting to get to the point where we could talk about Susie with joy and not cry. And now here we are again. So it's been really tough. It's been really tough on the family.
Susi Larsen was 34 years old, a graphic designer who lived in Lake Oswego and was engaged to be married to her boyfriend Keith, a Hot Wheels engineer for Mattel in California. But on August 27, 1996, just 2.5 weeks before the wedding, she disappeared. A frantic search began with friends putting up flyers all over Tualatin. Investigators later learned she'd gone to the apartment of an acquaintance who promised to make her earrings for the wedding. Instead, the acquaintance, Billy Lee Oatney Jr. and another man were charged with her gruesome murder. Here's a report I filed then after Oatney was arrested. It helps fill in the blanks here. Billy Lee Oatney Jr. walked into a Washington County courtroom to face the charge of murder. The prosecutor says Oatney strangled Susi Larsen here in his Tigard apartment, then dumped her body on the edge of Shampooey Park. Investigators offer no motive and would not say why Larsen was at Oatney's apartment. But the two were acquaintances. They'd met through a circle of friends that included Susi's roommate. At a news conference this morning, Susi's family learned for the first time about a chilling piece of Oatney's past.
He had been in the United States Navy, and during that time he was arrested and convicted for attempted murder and assault after apparently slitting the throat and stabbing another man who was in the Navy with him.
The attack apparently happened in Japan. Oatney was sentenced to 22 years in prison, but after just 13 years, he was out and living in Portland. Investigators believe DNA evidence found at the crime scene and in Oatney's apartment link him to the crime. The arrest ends speculation that a strange encounter on Goat Mountain played a role in Susi's murder. Investigators tracked down youths who ran into Larsen on the mountain the weekend before she disappeared and decided they had nothing to do with her death, which came at least 4 days later. The investigation eventually focused on Oatney and led to his arrest. The other man charged with Oatney took a plea deal back then to avoid the death penalty and agreed to testify against Oatney in his first trial. A jury convicted Oatney on 8 counts of murder, and the judge sentenced him to death. Susi's family felt relief and anger. Here's Susi's sister, Mindy Bush, all those years ago, speaking to Oatney during the sentencing.
I hate you for what you did to my sister, and I hate you for what you did to my family. My hope is that you will feel 1 ounce of the pain and fear that Susi felt. And every day to the day of your execution, your life is a living hell.
Oatney went off to prison, and the family thought it was all done, but they were wrong. In 2015, the State Court of Appeals reversed the conviction. In an opinion that spans 39 pages, the justices ruled that Oatney's defense attorney had not done his job well enough, did not fight hard enough to keep some of the testimony out of the trial. It involved a promise of immunity early in the investigation. As police tried to figure out what happened to Susi, the prosecutor at the time offered Oatney immunity if he told them everything he knew. And so he told them his friend had killed her while he was away. When detectives shared that information with the friend said, no. It was Oatney who raped and killed Susi Larsen at Oatney's apartment. The friend told that to the jury as well and helped convict Oatney. But the Court of Appeals found the friend would have never testified against Oatney if Oatney had not talked with police in the first place. And since Oatney had immunity when he did talk to the cops, the information the friend offered up after hearing what Oatney said about him, well, the court ruled that should have been blocked and kept from the jury. It was enough to toss the conviction. Mindy Bush, Susie's sister, is still angry at the prosecutor from back then.
Yes. Yeah. It was a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes, but it was a life and death mistake.
Even though the conviction was tossed, the initial murder charge stood. Oatney stayed in jail and is now getting a second trial. And no, that's not double jeopardy. Let's talk about that for a moment. Double jeopardy would happen in theory if someone was found not guilty at the end of their trial and then the prosecutor wanted to charge them again to see if a different jury would convict them. Our system does not allow double jeopardy. But Oatney was convicted and then the conviction was overturned. So it's like that first trial never happened. He's again charged with murder, but with much less testimony allowed than during that first trial.
It's really tough because of the overturning the conviction, they were not allowed to bring a lot of the evidence in. And so it's been a needle pulling thread. You know, you get on the stand, you can't answer completely because you can't expose certain things that have been forbidden. And it just feels wrong. I mean, you want a fair trial for everybody involved, but a fair trial is having the jury hear all the evidence. And in this time around, it's not the case.
Mindy Bush says she has faith in the prosecutors handling the case this time, but it's agonizing to go through this all over again.
Because we know too much. We, you know, the first time around, we were all learning what happened. Now we know what happened. And the frustration is tough because we can't. I just want to shout to the jury and say, this is who this guy is. This is who he really is.
Of course, you can't do that. The jury got the case last Wednesday afternoon. After 2.5 days, still no verdict. They will begin deliberations again tomorrow. Mindy Bush is terrified over the possibility that the man convicted of killing her sister could go free.
It's going to be heartbreaking. It'll be heartbreaking.
We'll be keeping tabs on those jury deliberations for as long as they last, and we'll bring you the verdict once we know it.